Good morning, everybody. I'm James Harris. I'm the Senior Local Democracy Officer. Just to advise everybody that we have received apologies today from the Chair and the Vice Chair of this committee. Therefore, under Standing Order 52, it's a matter for the committee to elect a Chair for the duration of this meeting. Welcome to Councillor Hunt. Do I have any nominations for Chair for this meeting, please? Councillor Perry.
Yes, could I nominate Councillor Hugh Mason, please?
Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second.
Seconded. Do I have any other nominations? No. In that case, is that agreed, members? That's agreed. Councillor Mason, would you like to take the chair, please?
Good morning and welcome to everybody. I'm Councillor Hugh Mason, the acting chairman of this planning committee. First of all, the housekeeping matters. If the continuous fire alarm sounds and there is no test fire alarm due for this morning, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Assembled by Queen Victoria's statue in the Guildhall Square. Also, to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building. Limited public seating is being available. However, this meeting is also being webcast to allow the public to watch remotely should they wish. Everybody speaking via a microphone will be on camera, including those making deputations. The public seating area is not in view of the cameras used to webcast this meeting. Members of the press and public are permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please, can everyone speaking use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished. For the benefit of the people making deputations, you use the microphone by pressing the red button on the console. You don't need to hold it down, just press it down and then press it down a second time when you have finished speaking. That should work. It usually does. For members, when voting, will members please keep their hands raised clearly until the number of votes have been stated? Right. For the clarification of how we go about this hearing planning applications, it runs in the following order. The officers planning application, the officers present the planning application. They tell us what it is, they will show it on the screen. Then any deputations, allowing for up to 12 minutes objecting and 12 minutes in favour. Then members will ask questions and comments about the matters in hand, and then we go to a decision. Right. Let us go around first of all to introduce who we are. I'll take the councillors first. I am Councillor Hugh Mason, and I've been sitting on this committee for many, many moons.
Yes, hello, I'm Councillor Denise Perry, Councillor for St Jude Ward.
Councillor Carl Inman for Copner and Anchorage Park.
Councillor Joe Standen for the Paulsgrove Ward.
Good morning, Chair. Councillor Matthew Cordy, member for Hilsey. So I'm Councillor Lee Hunt. I similarly been here for many suns, but unfortunately I'll have to put myself in the shade today because at 12 o'clock I have to leave, Chair, to go to Winchester to the Hampshire Police Crime Panel. But it looks like you're going to be quorate anyway.
Right, thank you for that information. Now can the officers please introduce themselves, starting off with the Chief Legal Officer.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Juliet Gill. I'm the Principal Planning Solicitor at Portsmouth City Council.
Good morning, Chair. David Hodges, Head of Development Management.
Good morning, Simon Turner. I'm one of the team leaders.
Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Thank you. And now can people who wish to make a deputation on any matter, could they introduce themselves and tell us on which of the items they wish to make a deputation? So if we start with the back row.
Good morning, my name is Carrie-Anne Wells and I'm representing 50 Chetwynd Road, 3 Lawson Road and 38 Margate Road today. Thank you.
Lawrence Harmer, 50 Chetwynd Road.
Good morning, Chair. James Oliver for 246 Havant Road.
I'm Mary Jane Stairs and I'm the applicant for 29 Alcott Road.
And coming across the back, anyone else? Okay, come to the next row down.
I'm Ian Knight and I'm representing 47 Birdlip Road.
Right.
Hello, I'm Martin Darper. I'm objecting to 252 Havant Road.
Right, thank you. That is, I think, everybody. And so we proceed. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Susie Horton, Chair, Councillor Mary Vallely, the Vice Chairman, and from Councillor Gerald Vernon Jackson. Are there any other apologies for absence which anyone has? No? Okay, thank you. Next thing is declaration of members' interests. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. This is for agenda item number 9, Alcott Road. I just wanted to make the committee aware that I've spoken to the sister of the owner of one of the adjoining properties, and I did advise them if they had an objection that they should do it within the allotted time. And this will in no way affect my judgment on the matter. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Yes, Chair, I've called in Alcott Road as well. I've spoken to one of the neighbours, but again, it's very unprejudicial. I've just talked her through the procedures, not actually discussed the case in hand.
Anyone else? No. Okay. We then move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, which you have all received. Is it resolved that the minutes of the Planning Committee held on the 27th of May 2026 be agreed as a correct record? Right. Thank you. I will sign those and deal with them a little later. So, having done that, we move on to the substantive business of today. And the first item, which I believe there is an officer's update on, is 47 Birdlip Road.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If I can draw members' attention to the supplementary update, you'll see that from the description of the application, that the application has been submitted and advertised purely as a change of use submission. Towards the end of last week, having requested proposed elevations from the applicant, it was apparent that there was a difference between the proposed elevations for this scheme, which are top right, excuse me, and the approved elevations for the previous householder application, in which we've written the report to acknowledge that that exists and that the extensions of the property were previously approved. So there's an issue whereby if the works with this current application don't match that previous permission, then in fact we're concerned that it has been misleadingly advertised, and that may prejudice people commenting on the scheme. In order to try and resolve this, our view is that there's some options available. In response, the agent who is here today has submitted an amended plan yesterday. So this would reflect the elevations which were approved under the householder application, and then be the same floor plan that you have for the proposed HMO. From our point of view, as you'll see from the SMAT, this is somewhat contrived because we end up with, in effect, this party wall for this bedroom running through the middle of this window. From our point of view, that doesn't solve our concern that, in effect, we advertise the application as purely being a change of use without the alterations as well, and that potentially could be seen as misleading to anyone who was interested in looking at and commenting on the scheme. So, as it stands, it is open to members to consider and determine the application today, but we would not recommend that you do that, and we recommend that we withdraw the application until we can resolve this issue either by republicising with the amended plans, because obviously no third parties have had a chance to look at these amended plans online because they've only been in since yesterday with us, or alternatively, if our preference, a fresh application is submitted for the whole scheme, which can go through its usual process. But that's our recommendation, Chair, that we withdraw the application from the agenda, but it is still open for members to discuss and determine the application today if they so see fit.
Councillor Stanley. Sorry. Okay, Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, maybe Councillor Stanley, it's his area, out of propriety, let him go first.
Yeah, so I appreciate that withdrawing it could be an option. However, looking into this, it's not just the plans that are a bit awry. So on the actual heading, it says change of use from a Class 3, a C3 dwelling to a 7-person, 7-bedroom house. The house already currently sits on our HMO register as a Class C4 4-bed HMO. So the whole application's wrong.
So, Chair, whilst it may have a licence, our consideration to date is that wouldn't be lawful in terms of either that they haven't submitted a lawful development certificate to prove that it's been used for more than 10 years, or that the planning permission's been granted. So there's no planning permission granting the HMO. It may be unlawfully being used as a HMO currently.
So what you're saying is it's unlawfully being used as a HMO at the moment, then?
I don't know. If it is being used as a HMO, we don't have a planning record for that, and we don't have a certificate of lawfulness saying that it's a HMO.
So rather than withdrawing this, why don't we just straight up reject it then?
You can do. What I'm just thinking of is what would be the reasons to do that, because if we start to look at, my concern is a procedural one, not a merit one. So just to be clear, we would need a planning reason to refuse the planning application. So if a layout can be achieved, sorry, I'm not sure if my microphone's working that well. If a layout that can be achieved that complies with our policies and the supplementary guidance, so i.e. the internal living conditions are fine and it's under 10%, then we wouldn't have a substantive planning reason to refuse it. That's my issue.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes, I want to take the officer's advice, as you know, just get it all right and then sort it out, if that's okay with you and Councillor Standen.
Councillor.
Sorry, Chair. I'm just wondering, how did it manage to get a licence without planning permission?
That's a question to ask licensing. My understanding is where the position is unclear, about the lawfulness from the planning side is that they would tend to grant shorter licences as an opportunity to then resolve the planning issues prior to whether they grant a longer licence. So typically they'll grant a 5-year licence, is my understanding, where they're clear that it's lawfully a HMO and a planning permission has been granted. Where it's unclear and there's no record, my understanding is that they will generally grant a 12-month licence to try and resolve it in that time.
Okay, because according to the HMO register, I'm just looking at now, it was granted a 2.5-year licence. So that seems like a lot longer than 12 months.
Yeah, sorry.
I think we're coming up here against the problem that both licensing and planning are statutory committees, and like various elements in the civil service, they tend not to talk to each other as much as they should. Councillor Stanton.
Yeah, I think this application, there's so murky. I think this needs to be completely withdrawn and a completely new application be put in.
That is a proposal. Is there a seconder for that?
That is a proposal, yes.
And it is seconded. Are there any other proposals?
Sorry, I thought Lee Hunt had proposed and earlier on, but fine.
So we have a proposal before us that this be withdrawn. Will those in favour of withdrawal please show? That then is unanimous. 47 Birdlip Road is withdrawn, and we will probably see it again in the not too distant future. Thank you. Okay, we now move on to 252 Havant Road. Officers?
Thank you, Chairman. So we have an application at 252 Havant Road. The premises are currently in Class E commercial use at ground floor and a flat at first floor. So the application is to change part of the ground floor, the rear part, and the first floor, and to build a mansard roof to provide a 7-bedroom, 7-person HMO, and to retain the front part of the ground floor as Class E commercial use. That's it in a nutshell. The application has come to committee because of the number of objections. I have a supplementary matters update for you at the end, and we have public speaking from Mr. Diaper and Mr. Oliver, the applicant. So we're in Drayton and Farlington Ward in the Havant Road local centre. So we're just under a mile east of the north end of Cosham High Street, which is a larger local centre, but this is also a local centre. Got a string of shops and other services, pubs, bars, restaurants, that sort of thing here. So it's in a local designated centre. Some members on the committee last autumn may remember an application at the site for a similar proposal, and indeed one 3 doors to the west at number 246. They were both on the same committee. They were both refused. I mentioned 246 as well because, excuse me, that decision was appealed and the appeal was allowed, i.e. planning permission has been granted, and so that appeal decision has given the inspectors thinking on some local matters effectively that can be referred across to this site because it's in the same local centre, 3 doors along. So I'll be referring back to that appeal decision at number 246 as well. But this application at 252 was refused for the last October for 5 reasons, which I'll come back to in turn, but just to set them out for you, there was the loss of commercial space in the local centre. It was a reduction, just like this one. Comings and goings from the HMO affecting neighbouring residential occupiers. An objection to the mansard roof extension being overly bulky and overbearing. The parking matter, and the technical reason of the impact on the special protection areas not being mitigated. So those were 5 reasons that I'll take you through with the new application. So clearly the applicant has appealed that decision. That decision on the appeal is awaited. In the meantime, they have applied with this reduced scheme, which does seek to address the 5 reasons for refusal from last October. So in the local centre here, the site has, you can see it outlined in red, there's a shared access with next door to the west, which is number 250. So because it's half ownership either side, but they both have a legal right to pass in either way to get to their rear courtyard areas. You can see in the site there's a privet hedge on the right-hand side that could be cut back or removed, and then you can see 2 cars tucked in there. And then on the left-hand side at number 250 and 248, I think, another car park. So they need to, you may remember last time, discussions about manoeuvrability and so on. Those are the current arrangements. Thank you, David. Right. We've had discussions with the applicant about the number of parking spaces. Originally proposed were 2, which you can't see now. The other space was next door to that space. Because of the issues of manoeuvring, we did think we should perhaps go for 1. So there's a bit of uncertainty around that. We can come back to that in a minute. Otherwise, you can see the shared access point that opens out then into the 2 yards. You can see on the roof some solar panels, and then at the rear you can see on the right-hand side a deck, a little terrace that would open out from the communal space. You'll see that in more detail in a moment. And then some cycle storage and bin storage next to that. Thank you. So there's the street frontage. So there's an access down there, shared access. So the Co-op Funeral Care currently occupy the ground floor, the whole of the ground floor. With respect to the principle of an additional HMO in the area for mixed and balanced communities, there is 1 presently, which is the approval at number 246, the yellow star on the left-hand side. Not yet implemented, I think, but with that live consent now, 1 on appeal. And then, of course, there was another application where they also submitted a second approval that got granted at committee with an alteration. So they've got a choice of 2 schemes to implement there. Anyway, with the proposal at number 252, that would be a second HMO in the 50-metre radius, amounting to 4%, so well below the 10% threshold for mixed and balanced communities, so in accordance with policy. The existing floor plans, so traditional shop front leading through on the ground floor into a selection of rooms, as it happens, occupied by the funeral care company. And then on the side of the ground floor, you can see a door which leads you straight into the stairs and takes you straight upstairs into the flat, which has got those 4 rooms upstairs. Thank you. You've seen the elevation on the front of the street there. There's the side elevation, so you can see the side door for the existing flat there. At the rear, there's a raised platform that gives access into the back door. That would be removed, and that's where the new little terrace, amenity terrace, would go. Thank you. So the proposed conversion is to, as I say, to the Class E unit would retreat into the front half, the front third or half of the site, and then the rear half would be for the HMO, with the first floor and then the mansard roof built on the second floor to provide all the bedrooms. So 7 single bedrooms. So on the ground floor, you've got a shared WC, and then moving into the communal kitchen dining area and utility room, and the decking is an extra really to give a bit of open, rather than having to step down into the yard, that would open onto this decking to provide more air and fresh air and outlook and so on for the occupiers. Because the land slopes down from north to south, the Aldsworth Close to the south is at lower level, and so there could be an issue of overlooking from that new window. So the decking would be surrounded with a head-high screen to prevent that overlooking for the neighbours. The communal space is at 31 square metres, well above the 22.5 required. Then moving upstairs, we have all rooms are en suite. So 4 bedrooms on the first floor using existing windows and so on, and a new mansard on the top floor. You'll notice to bedroom, you may notice to bedroom 6, there's a bit of shading, extra shading on that window. That is a new window and would look across and down into the kitchen window on the flat opposite, on the other side of the shed access. So in order to protect the kitchen window for the neighbour, there is a vertical louvering at an angle just to direct, so you don't get a view straight across into your neighbour, your view is directed away, so you still get light. That was part of the previous application as well. There you can see it on the top there, those are the louvers that just direct that view away, and then on the right hand side you can see the little raised platform that would give that outdoor amenity for the occupiers. Thank you, David. Just a section for completeness. Moving on to the mansard, there it is on the top there, so that would replace the existing roof. We'll discuss that further. There we are. So coming to each of the reasons for refusal from last time. The mansard roof was the third reason. That was considered overly bulky and overbearing by the committee. The application at 246 also had a mansard, slightly different property, but that was deemed acceptable both by the committee and subsequently by the inspector. Although in 2D on the street scene it looks a little awkward, that can happen with a 2D black and white drawing, but there's a difference between a simple black and white 2D drawing and what would actually result in reality on the ground with appropriate materials. You can see on the street scene, and if we go to the next slide, there's quite a lot of variety, and the case officer and I have both been there separately, and we're convinced that that mansard would not read as incongruous or difficult within the street scene. So on the bottom you've got single-storey dwellings with properties with different roof form, and then different roof forms going along the row. The application site sits towards a bit beyond the arrow there on the left. So there's a variety of roof forms. Then above is on the opposite side of the Havant Road Centre, just a bit further west. A couple of mansards there, so there is some precedent in the area for this sort of form of roof. And then on to the next slide. The application site is sort of that's it, thank you. We've got this 3-storey flat-roofed, or apparently flat-roofed Art Deco type building. So there's a variety of roof forms there, and we do believe the mansard will be acceptable, and indeed the inspector thought so on the one 3 doors along. So we feel that that issue has been addressed. In terms of comings and goings, that was a reason for refusal for the neighbours. So 250 there has flats at first floor. So the previous application was for 9 occupiers. This one would be for 7. Officers don't believe that that number of occupiers in a reasonably sized premises in a local centre on a busy main road would cause undue noise and disturbance for neighbours which are in a separate property at number 250, for example, nor to the neighbours on the party wall at number 254. That was number 2 reason. The loss of commercial space in Havant Road Centre. So the policy does seek to retain commercial use at ground floor, and residential use is not encouraged, are the words of the policy. And that was a reason for refusal from the committee. That was the same issue at number 246 Havant Road, which was losing even more commercial space and had a small area retained at the front for commercial space. The inspector found that acceptable in the round. The inspector did acknowledge that it was nevertheless a breach of that policy, but in view of the other benefits of the scheme at number 246, that inspector felt the application or the appeal could be allowed. I think that's directly transferable to this site. It's 3 doors along in the same local centre with the same amount, similar, of commercial ground floor use retained. The refused application was 22 square metres, would have been retained. This has increased it to 34. So there's a slight improvement there, which is exactly what happened at number 246 when members refused it originally and then approved a slightly larger retained ground floor commercial use. So again, officers can recommend that matter positively again. And then lastly, parking. We've had a debate with the applicants about whether there should be 1 or 2 spaces at the rear. You can see 2 clearly is achieved somehow, clearly with manoeuvring with the neighbours, or perhaps just the first car coming out and letting the second car shuffle in and out and so on. So that is why we did discuss with the applicant whether we should have 2 or 1. Do we have another slide? The next one perhaps. There we are. So originally we had 2. We did ask for 1. That one position still has the same issues of manoeuvring. You can see from the photograph. So it's up to members really. Either way, it's in a local centre, whether it's 1 space or 2, with good sustainable transport, access to all the shops and services and so on. Cosham Town Centre, very close by with its train and lots of buses running through there as well. And the inspector at number 246, 3 doors along, was happy with 1 parking space there for that HMO, which was for 8 persons. So whether 1 or 2 spaces, I expect the applicant would perhaps quite likely to keep it informal as it is at the moment, so they can make the best use of it, not be restrained by 1 space marked out perhaps, and work it out with the neighbours if that is indeed what happens. So we feel either way that matter is resolved. And then the last matter of special protection areas falls away with all those other matters dealt with. The applicant would sign the legal agreement to pay the mitigation for bird aware and recreational disturbance. I think I went through it rather a canter for the layout of the rooms and so on, just to confirm that that's right, I took you through the communal space, but all the bedrooms are very large also, much above the 10 square metres. They range from 10.5 right up to 16 and 15 square metres, so it's good sized accommodation for the proposed occupiers, and the rooms have appropriate light and outlook and configuration. They're big square rooms. Otherwise, I think we can move on to the supplementary matters. That's all right, that's right, thank you. So the first one is the extra condition we proposed, number 12. I've taken you through the side window with the louvers, and I've taken you through the rear deck terrace with the obscure glazing, just to deal with neighbours' privacy. That's the first. We didn't have the condition for that, so that's proposed there. Next, for completeness, biodiversity net gain, we omitted that from the report with apologies. I mentioned that large privet hedge. That's exempt from biodiversity net gain. It's not a priority habitat. Back to the small rear amenity terrace, again to clarify, because it wasn't clearly specified in the development description, but it is shown on the plans. We just wanted to make clear that is part of the proposal. Indeed, you can see it on the plans there, on the floor plans and the elevations. And we've discussed here the frosted screen glazing. Then moving on to an objection from the current commercial tenant, Co-op Funeral Care, of the Class C premises on the ground floor. They did object prior to publication with apologies. That wasn't picked up, so we're doing that now. Their main points are Co-op have no desire to relocate from the unit, and they were unaware of the landlord's intentions to submit a further application. The smaller size unit proposed is not adequate for their needs and will result in the branch needing to close, leading to the loss of a ground floor commercial use in the local centre. They note there will be an intensification of residential disturbances through the HMO use, resulting in direct conflict, were they to remain, with the operation of the funeral business, such as hearses and families parking at the rear. They note they have rights of access to the rear service yard. In terms of officer response, there's obviously a good deal of sympathy with any company that may not want to relocate, but that ultimately that is a matter between the landlord and that tenant, and the terms of their contract and any other arrangements may come to. That's a private matter. It's not a reason in planning, town and country planning, to withhold or grant a permission. That matter of the commercial use at the ground floor is dealt with by policy PCS 18, which I've taken you through, where residential uses are not encouraged on the ground floor, but we have an appeal decision 3 doors along where the inspector, with the other benefits of that other scheme, felt that that policy conflict was overridden by the other benefits, and the inspector did note that even with a reduced unit, there would still be topping up shopping needs provided, for example, were that to be a little local shop. So some sympathy, of course, with the Co-op, but ultimately we feel the matter is dealt with respect to planning policy. Further, we have an objection, I think, from Mr Diaper, who will be speaking in a moment, but we've set it out here via Councillor Gardner. Having read the officer report, the objector notes the report fails to include the inspector's conclusion at 246 Havant Road that the introduction of ground floor residential in place of commercial conflicts with PCS 18. Yes, we're happy to confirm again the inspector found limited harm to the viability and vitality and viability of the local centre and stated a conflict with PCS 18. As I've said, the inspector then went on to weigh the limited adverse impact from that loss or reduction in floor space against the benefits of the proposal. Just to remind members, it's common for any application that raises multiple issues for not all aspects of policy to be followed, perhaps, but you have to weigh everything up. You don't refuse an application because there's a conflict with one aspect of one policy necessarily. You weigh up the other pros and cons or benefits and disbenefits of the scheme, which of course the inspector did at number 246, and we'd ask you to do the same here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now move on to the deputations. We first take the objector and then the applicant. So, Mr Diaper, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you very much. That raised a load of issues there. I'm speaking on behalf of my wife, Lynn Diaper, who actually owns 250A Havant Road, which is a 2-bedroom first-floor flat, which is adjacent to number 252. We strongly object to this application. Essentially, it's a rework of the earlier application and repeats many of the issues that led to rejection of that proposal. And again, the applicant's chosen not to engage with neighbours and talk about their proposals. For background, our property is to the west of number 252, separated from it by this narrow shared passageway, which is about 3.5 to 4 metres wide. And our flat's in a block comprising 2 ground floor shops and 2 first floor flats. And that's numbers 248A and 250A. They share a common entrance door to the south. Emergency exits for the shops are also situated to the south. I think it's very important to note that the shared passageway between numbers 250 and 252 is the sole access to the flats. It's the only way that people can get in and out of those 2 properties. It also leads to the private parking for the shops in the flats. The proposal is for the HMO's entrance to be actually into the passageway, not on the street. Now, as has been mentioned, the funeral director occupies number 252, has done so for over 25 years, been there ages. The first floor residential unit, however, has been empty for many years. And the only evidence we have is from the HMRC's valuation office agency, which shows the entire building has been liable for business rates since at least April 2017. So it's quite possible the whole building is actually falls into Class E. Now, our objections, I mean, there's 4 main ones. I mean, first one is the major impact on the residential amenity. There can be a massively increased comings and goings, and it's the scale of development that matters. Not that it's HMO as such, it is actually the amount of development. Now, currently, the main access for the funeral directors is the street door, with only occasional use of the passageway for preparing funeral corteges, etc. And the use is confined to business hours, Monday to Friday. The door into the passageway is largely unused. They don't need it. In contrast, the proposals for 7 separate occupants, their visitors, deliveries, etc., coming and going 24/7, 365 days a year into the passageway door. And that is directly opposite our bathroom window. Calculate roughly in excess of 10,000 additional movements per annum. The inevitable noise and disturbance will badly affect the amenity of our property. What's currently quite a nice, quiet location will be dramatically changed. I think the committee's report on Para 838 subsequent conclusion downplays the harm this proposal will cause. On top of that, you've got on-street parking, and Havant Road is limited, and so it's quite predictable that vehicle traffic for number 252 will tend to use and block that shared access, the only access to the flat. Rather than reversing to or from Havant Road, which is actually quite a dangerous thing to do, drivers will be tempted to drive on and turn in the land at the rear of our block, number 248 to 250. Some may even park there. Now, 252 has no rights over the land behind 248 and 250, So inevitably disputes will arise, obstruction of our parking, noise and disturbance to the bedrooms at the rear of the two flats. The present proposal is really just a recipe for a lot of neighbour aggravation, and I know our landlord has spoken about wheel clamping and all the other things that may be necessary. Turning to parking, the second item, I note the updated plans, but to be clear, we own 2 parking spaces directly on a 125-year lease. They are owned and for the sole use of ourselves, and it's similar for one of the other flats. And to be clear, we're not going to permit our parking to be used as access for number 252 space. It may currently happen during the working day, but it will not be permitted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If need be, we're going to fence off the land. It's as simple as that. Turning to waste management, the proposals for 3 bins, no secure storage or suitable segregation. We would like there to be segregated secure storage. Otherwise, the rubbish from those bins is going to be blowing into the back of our property and we'll be having to clear it up. Moving on to the Havant Road Local Centre. As pointed out, 252 is in the Havant Road Local Centre. And what I want to do is just read out the inspector's conclusion when he's talking about what happened at 246, because that is very relevant. And again, I slightly disagree, I'm afraid, with what's in the report. The inspector writes that nevertheless, the location of the site within the Havant Road Local Centre means that it is not a suitable location for the introduction of ground floor residential use in place of existing ground floor commercial space. The proposal therefore conflicts with policy PCS 18 regarding development within local centres. That's what they wrote. There's no interpretation there. That is directly what the planning inspector wrote about 246. The difference is between 246 and 252 is that at number 246 there was a limited adverse impact on neighbours. For 252 it's clear there will be adverse impact on neighbours. That narrow shared passageway and all the parking issues that will go with it, the disturbance that will close. I mean, should this application be granted, as the funeral directors have said, they were going to have to move out. As a result of that, you're going to have now the forced closure of 2 local businesses. The one at 246, which was a bicycle repair shop, something that actually you thought Portsmouth would have been encouraging, and 252 to make way for these HMOs. It's not in the best interest of the local population to shut existing viable businesses down and convert them into a residential accommodation. So in summary, this application should be rejected. It changes what is actually a quiet, peaceful location to one that's going to be very busy, has negative impacts on neighbours, including that loss of privacy, noise, disturbance. The poor arrangement for access will result in frequent trespass and loss of amenities, and it harms the shopping in the local centre with the loss of valuable retail premises. Thank you. I hope I didn't gabble too much.
Mr. Oliver, you have 6 minutes.
Chair, members, I wish to speak in support of this application and in particular draw your attention to the significance of the planning inspector's appeal decision for 246 Havant Road, which was not only allowed but was accompanied by an award of costs against the council. That appeal is a highly material consideration because it considered virtually identical planning issues on the same parade of shops under the same development plan policies and within the same local area. The planning inspector concluded that there was no compelling evidence that the proposal would result in an over-concentration of non-shopping uses or harm the vitality and viability of the district centre. The inspector also found that retaining a ground floor commercial unit continued to meet local shopping needs and that any harm arising from the reduction in commercial floor space would be limited. The officers acknowledge this within the committee report. They state that the inspector's findings should be given great weight because the policy context and planning issues are the same. They also rely upon the inspector's conclusions regarding the acceptability of the mansard roof, the sustainability of the location and the parking provision. This application also addresses issues that were raised within the last application, which was refused in the committee. It retains a larger ground floor commercial unit than previously refused scheme. It reduces the number of occupants from 9 to 7. It provides potentially 2 parking spaces, but certainly 1, whereas the inspector accepted a larger HMO at 246 Havant Road with only one space. It also remains well below the council's adopted 10% HMO threshold, resulting in only 2 HMOs within a 50-metre radius. Members should be mindful that the appeal at 246 Havant Road resulted in an award of costs because the inspector found that the council had not produced evidence to substantiate key reasons for refusal. It is therefore essential that any decision made today is firmly grounded in evidence and consistent with that appeal decision. To reach a different conclusion on materially similar planning issues without robust new evidence would risk inconsistency in decision-making and could expose the council to further unnecessary appeal costs. For those reasons, I respectfully ask members to support the offer of recommendation and approve the application.
Thank you. We now come to members' questions. Councillor Hunt.
May I ask the officers, if this application were to be successful today, have you had an indication that they would withdraw their appeal on the other one or not?
We haven't asked, and yeah, we wouldn't. It's really just completely up to them.
All right, so just to clarify, this is 2 bedrooms less. We're talking about possibly 2 car parking spaces, retention of the commercial ground floor, notwithstanding what the co-op says. So, in your opinion, it's an improved, so far as we, the committee, it is a better looking application from the way the committee normally looks at these things.
Absolutely.
Councillor Perry.
Yeah, can I ask a question in reference to something Mr. Draper? Sorry, I pronounced it wrong. About it being a whole commercial building if it hasn't been used as a flat for a number of years. Is there any sort of legal grounds for that aspect? Is the whole building a Class E building because of the way it's been used?
Don't have any evidence in front of us. He referred to business rates, I think. If it was a flat in the past, and unless that flat use has been abandoned, and there are lawful tests for that are quite complex in planning law, we imagine even if the flat has been relatively underused or is empty, it's probably still classified as a flat, I would say, in planning law, but we don't have full details.
So would that be a ground for us to have that as a something that could be clarified before we make a decision?
I don't think we need to. The issue of a loss of commercial space is clear. That's only the ground floor. Co-op, I believe, only use the ground floor, so we have all that information in front of us. On the face of it, I believe the lawful use of the first floor to be a flat, so it's replacing one type of residential accommodation with another, so that there doesn't seem to be any particular issue with that. Thank you.
Councillor Edmonds first, then Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to my favourite topic, the HMO register. 246, the appeal decision was made on the 2nd of April, some 8 to 10 weeks away, yet it's still not appearing on the HMO register. I'm just wondering what the time lag is from something being awarded a HMO status to it actually going on the register.
Yeah, the HMO register is primarily a licensing register, and I don't think they necessarily, because it's not an HMO yet, I presume, they don't necessarily, the moment something gets planning consent, put it on that register, which is precisely why when we receive planning applications for change of use to HMO, we check the licensing register, we also check the planning history. That's where this sort of situation is picked up, as well as council tax information as well. So we don't rely on one source. So that's why it wouldn't necessarily be on the licensing register already.
Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on something Mr. Diper mentioned. Would he and his wife be permitted to fence off their car parking area if they so wish to do so? And would this would the parking at 250 still be viable? Sorry, 252 be still be viable if this fence was actually erected?
Thank you, Councillor. I think there they could erect a fence of up to 2 metres in height. So yes, they could do that in terms of planning legislation. Not sure why they do that, but anyway, that would be their choice. It would impede, to some degree, the manoeuvrability from the space we saw, which is why we've tried to rehearse with you, well, there's clearly space for, already you can see 2 cars parked there. That's achieved in somehow. I don't know if that's manoeuvring just on the application site, removing the first car and the second car, shuffling to and forward a little bit till it can then reverse out, or whether it requires the use of the adjoining land. I don't know. But we've seen there's plenty of space, clearly, for at least 1 car. So if members were minded to approve the application and leave it open to the applicant to use whatever they can to get into their manoeuvring. If they can't use adjoining land for manoeuvring, so be it. They'll need to make access to their land as they see fit and as they can, whether it's 1 or 2 cars that they can actually get on there. Whether it's 1 or 2 with respect to car parking in the local centre, as I said, sorry to repeat, we're in a local centre with bus routes, lots of shops and services locally, the hospital nearby, employment, Cosham Town Centre, the train station, and the inspector 2 doors along was happy with 1 parking space for those premises. So it's a little bit fluid, but I think that it can just be resolved on site by the applicant as he or she chooses.
Thank you. So there's no obligation for the neighbours to allow vehicles to access their land to be able to park. Is that right?
We've seen the deeds which show the obligation is on the access way between the 2 buildings. Both sides must let the other pass and repass, of course. Once you get beyond the end of the buildings, that ability, that agreement finishes. So, yes, so if they erected a fence, or in any event, the applicant, as far as I can see, doesn't have the right to use next door's parking space for manoeuvring, and that would also depend what's parked there and whether or not there's a fence.
Yes, so if the fence did go up, we may have a situation where there's no parking to go with the HMO. That's something to consider, I think.
I think you're delving into private law matters in terms of, I don't know, I mean, I haven't seen the lease or anything, so I don't know what the lease says, so I think we need to be a bit careful that we're going outside.
All I'm saying is if the fence went up, they may not be able to access the area that's been put down for parking, which would then mean that an 8-bedroom HMO provides no parking.
Well, no, I'm advising you that's a private law matter. So I don't know if they are able to put a fence up or not in terms of their lease. So I think we need to be careful that we don't go into the private law matters which are not relevant to planning.
If I may assist further.
And I think that it is relevant. You know, if there's no parking available, we should take that into consideration.
Thank you, Councillor. I think there would be parking. So informally or formally, that arrangement could be shown differently. So you pass down the right of access down the middle, and then you turn left into the site. Now, you don't have to turn it neatly at a right angle. You could just go in diagonally without needing next door's land, and then back out, or you could choose to back into the site, or you indeed, yeah. So there's no difficulty in getting at least 1 car in the back there, informally or formally, in my opinion.
Which is the question that I initially asked, so thank you.
There's currently no fence there, so we're looking at the situation as it is.
And as you rightly say, that would be a civil matter rather than a planning matter. My question concerns the new roof arrangements. As the front room, which is being developed, it's on my plan as number 5. Can you assure me that A, all of that room is at full height, an acceptable height, and secondly, the window would appear to be leading on to a Juliet balcony. Is that a Juliet balcony?
Yes, Councillor, you're correct in everything. So being a mansard roof, it's got a tiny, very, very shallow incline on it, or very steep incline. So the room is at full height across the whole floor area. That's one of the generously sized rooms at nearly 16 square metres. And yes, that's a Juliet balcony, so just a little bit of extra amenity for the occupier to be able to stand there if they want to look across the street at the trees and whatever's going on in the street with a bit of fresh air.
Right. Are there any more questions? Comments? Councillor Hunt?
So look, you know, you have to be careful what you wish for, don't you? I mean, I've been on this panel now, like you, Chair, a long time, and so many times I've seen people just stick their heels in. I understand why, but they stick their heels in, and it becomes a thing, and they end up with a worse situation than they could have had. You know, that's why I touched on the questions. This is 2 rooms less, so the activity be less. It would appear that there could be 1 or 2 car parking spaces. If there's a bit of willingness about, I would tend to leave that out of any decision we make today. So you do, so often I see the committee cut off its nose to spite its face, really. So, you know, really and truly, it's a much improved situation than last time. This will happen one way or the other, whether it's 9 bedrooms or the 7 bedrooms. So we couldn't understand, we weren't able to understand whether they would withdraw their appeal on 9. I think we should do everything to encourage them to come to 7 rather than 9, for all the reasons that people get concerned about. So, I mean, made it plain. I think it's a much better application than before. Some will probably say, well, it's not good enough, but it's going to happen anyway. So let's try and get it to 7. So I move the officer's report with conditions described by them earlier.
Right, so we have a proposition for the officer's report plus conditions. Is there a seconder for that? Okay, thank you, Councillor Perry. Are there any other propositions? No. Okay, so we have the proposition to accept the officer's report and the officer's conditions. Will those in favour please indicate? Will those against please indicate? Will those abstaining please indicate? Right, that is now carried. You have your planning permission for 252 Havant Road. Thank you. We now move on. I suggest that since there are no deputations on Guildhall Square, we leave that to the end, so that we try and minimise the amount of time the deputies are waiting. And so I move on to 50 Chetwynd Road.
May I, Chair? Sorry. The time is now like 11:30. I need to be away at noon. I was hoping to be involved with the ice rink. I was hoping to be involved with the ice rink one, which I didn't think would take very long. So, but on the grounds that you're going to go to Chetwynd Road, which will probably take about an hour, I think it's appropriate for me to now go rather than be late for the meeting in Winchester, if you don't mind.
Certainly, knowing the importance of that meeting in Winchester, I would agree that you should depart the meeting. So thank you very much for your attendance.
Right. Thank you very much.
If we can move on to 50 Chetwynd Road, I have a deputation from Councillor Horton, which he was not going to chair this particular section of the meeting anyway. I will read her deputation at the correct time. So, can we have 50 Chetwynd Road, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So an application at 50 Chetwynd Road for a change of use in multiple, from a house in multiple occupation, class C4, to an 8-person, 8-bedroom house. There are 4 persons resident, so it will be an increase of 4 people, which the planning authority agrees with the applicant needs planning permission, to contrast it from the increase in occupancy of 1 or 2 persons we see on some other applications. The applications come to the planning committee because of the number of objections and a call-in request from Councillor Gerardo. So we have the applicant and agent here to make their deputations, and Victoria Cooper, who objected to the scheme and has then made a request to make a deputation today. I understand the request was received after the deadline, so that's at the chair's discretion as to whether or not Victoria Cooper is allowed to make a deputation. Otherwise, we have it in writing. And I could read that out.
Victoria Cooper has taken the effort to come along to this meeting. I see no reason why she should not address the meeting.
Lovely. There we are. Okay. Right. So we're in Central Southsea Ward. Just about make out the location of the site. So Chetwynd Road runs east-west. Its eastern side is Fawcett Road. The western end is Lawrence Road, leading up towards Fratton or south towards Albert Road. So a terraced house, an existing HMO. Just for completeness, while we're there, you can see the rear extension and a bike store. Thank you. There we are, mid-terrace house. With respect to the mixed and balanced communities, this property is already an HMO, and so there will be no change to percentage. The percentage is relatively high. Got the figure here, 25%, 25.35. That wouldn't change because it is already an HMO. What would change is the occupancy of the dwelling to go from the HMO to go from 4 to 8 persons. Members are familiar with the emerging local plan policy, PLP 20, which seeks to resist increases in occupation in areas where HMOs already exceed 10%, except in exceptional circumstances. We've rehearsed this 3 or 4 times, I think, in the last 6 months with different applications. We're awaiting appeal decisions on those. Officers' position is that it's not yet adopted policy, can't be given full weight, and it has some weight. Balance that against the lack of 5-year housing supply, which is important in the national planning policy context. Officers' recommendation is still to approve the application. Members can consider that, of course. Moving on, the existing floor plans, relatively traditional, I think, in its original form of the main body, two main rooms upstairs and downstairs, and then the rear wing. Thank you. And then the increase in occupancy, if granted, would be accompanied by permitted development, a rear dormer, a rear ground floor extension, and 2 roof lights to the front, and the extensive remodelling you may have noticed. So, as proposed, you come in through the front door, and 2 bedrooms on your left, first of all, then a shared WC separate to a shared shower and WC, and then moving into the communal kitchen dining room at 26.5 square metres, well clear of the 22.5. And then upstairs, 3 bedrooms with a shared shower room and WC, and 3 on the top storey, again with shared shower and WC. All the bedrooms comfortably exceed the minimum size, in this case 10 square metres, and as I said, the combined living space would also exceed its minimum standard by about 4 square metres. Officers are happy with the sizes and the configuration of the rooms and the access to light and outlook for the future occupiers. We've got elevations, I think, so you can see the roof rear extension, the ground floor limited extension, and the ground floor bedroom 1 has a full height window indicated in the light well there. That's south facing as well, but it is in the light well, so this particular applicant and agent often put that straight in to maximise the light into those rooms. Sections for completeness, part of the substantial remodelling internally. Now to the crux of the matter. So members would have seen from the report there was an application that was refused early this year, also for 8 persons, 8 bedrooms, which is on the left-hand side. That had a prior approval rear extension, and it had a larger communal internal space that you can see. But as you can see from the site plan on the left-hand side, it left next to no rear garden stroke rear yard area to enjoy for the occupiers for some sort of outdoor amenity. And there was the window to the kitchen was side facing only to the fence as well, so it wasn't great outlook. So officers refused that under delegated powers, and the inspector agreed in a nutshell and dismissed the appeal a week and a bit ago. So the new application is on the right-hand side. So the applicants have just scaled back the communal area. It's still within passing the size allowances. And then the effect of that outside, as you can see, is to provide a small but now usable and some benefit outdoor space for the occupiers. So you could go out there with a cup of coffee or just have a sit down or a natter or whatever you like, a little barbecue. It's big enough and it's south facing to provide some sort of useful amenity that the first one really wasn't. And the outlook also, you can see the window on the end of that building would look over that. So the outlook from that large communal room would be better. So that is simply what's in front of you is the change which enables the officers to recommend that for approval now. I think that's all I need to take you through for the moment. Sorry, Chairman, sorry, the supplementary matters. So since publication, Highways have commented no objection, wanting the cycle storage, which you can see. We've just for completeness, we've just clarified the bedroom 6 annotations, and then for completeness as well, in the event of a planning consent being granted, it needs the mitigation for the special protection areas, which would need to be achieved through the section 111 legal agreement in the normal way, and I've set that out in full at the appendix 1 down below. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We come to deputations. The first one, Victoria Cooper. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to speak today. I do really appreciate it. So to introduce myself, I'm Vicky. I live at 48 Chetwynd Road. That's adjoining the application site of 50 Chetwynd Road. So as the adjoining neighbour, my family and myself will be the residents most affected by this proposal, but the concerns I raised today are not just mine, they're shared by many of my neighbours who've also objected, as seen on the online portal. I want to be really, really clear from the outset, I do not oppose to HMOs at all. The house is already an HMO. I recognise that some of the issues some people bring to these meetings are not material planning considerations. I'm not here to talk about parking. I'm not here to talk about speculate who might live there in the future. That's not what this is about. My objection is based solely on material planning considerations. The application seeks to double the occupancy of the property from 4 people to 8 people. Although the use remains as an HMO, so it doesn't increase the number overall, it's like adding an additional one. It doubles the number of occupants and it fundamentally changes the scale and intensity of occupation and creates materially different planning impacts. The proposal also raises concerns about the quality of accommodation being created. The plans show extensive internal alterations designed to maximise occupancy within what was originally built as a family home. I get that individual room sizes do meet the minimum standards, but planning isn't just about minimum dimensions, as the National Planning Policy Framework expects developments to provide a high standard of amenity for future occupants. Squeezing 8 unrelated adults into this footprint, together with a reduced rear yard due to the extension and the bike store shed, raises legitimate concerns that this proposal represents overdevelopment rather than good quality housing for people. The proposal sits within an existing cluster of HMOs. There are 3 in a row at that end of Chetwynd Road. And as already discussed, Portsmouth Council's own data shows 25% of the properties in that surrounding area are HMOs, significantly exceeding the council's 10% threshold used to identify harmful concentrations. This is exactly why the area is covered by an Article 4 direction, and why further intensification must be carefully scrutinised by both the council's supplementary planning document and the emerging local plan seeking to protect balanced communities and resist further concentrations of HMOs unless exceptional circumstances can be demonstrated. No exceptional circumstances have been presented in this application. There's no shortage of HMO accommodation in the surrounding areas, rental accommodation even. That's evident by the number of HMOs that sit empty for months on end. Just take a walk around the local area. Look at Rightmove. There are plenty of empty houses that are up for rent, be it to students or to other tenants in these kind of properties. The proposal to also permanently remove another family-sized home as indicated on the plans. This house could easily revert to a family property. Instead, the extensive internal remodelling would permanently alter that. It would take it away at a time when family housing in Portsmouth remains a short supply. I think it is important, and I know it's been called out, this is not the first time an 8-bedroom proposal has been considered for this site. Planning inspector previously concluded the proposal would fail to provide an acceptable level of amenity space and dismissed the appeal. I do acknowledge the applicant has reduced the size of the rear extension to provide some space for a small patio and table and chairs. The fundamental planning issue remains unchanged. Once the extension and bike store, shed, are built, the usable outdoor space for 8 unrelated adults will still be significantly smaller than yards serving neighbouring family homes occupied by far fewer people. I think it is worth noting that it's been referred to as garden. It is very much a concrete yard. It's not a garden as some people might imagine. The changes made are cosmetic rather than fundamental. They do not overcome the planning harm previously identified by both the council and the planning inspector. As the adjoining occupier, I'm also concerned about the impact of neighbouring residential amenity. Doubling the occupancy will inevitably increase day-to-day activity, comings and goings, deliveries, shared living, general domestic noise. This is not a criticism of the future tenants at all. It is simply a predictable consequence of doubling the intensity of residential use. I'm very sure for everyone in the room here, if the occupants in the house next door to them doubled overnight, they might notice a slight difference in their way of living as well. There's also an important environmental consideration. The property lies within the Solent catchment, where development must comply with the habitats regulations and nutrient neutrality requirements. Increasing the occupancy from 4 to 8 residents will increase foul water output and associated nitrogen loading. I have seen that the applicants do intend to make financial contributions to counteract that. However, I would question whether that is the right thing to do in this scenario. In summary, the objection is not based on an opposition to shared living. It is based on the significant intensification of an already heavily concentrated HMO area. The proposal would further undermine community balance, permanently remove another potential family home, fail to provide an acceptable standard of amenity for future occupants, and materially impact neighbouring residential amenity. The planning system requires decision makers to consider whether neighbouring amenity would be materially harmed through over-intensification, and I believe the threshold has been reached in this case. In my view, this application represents a continuation and intensification of the same fundamental planning harm previously identified by both the council and the planning inspector, rather than a meaningful revision of the scheme. So for those reasons, I would respectfully ask the committee to refuse this application. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. Slightly over 6 minutes, but no matter. Ms Wells and Mr Harmer, you have 12 minutes between you, however you wish to split it.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Lawrence and I'm a Director of Portsmouth Student Lets. My planning consultant will explain why this application should be approved from a planning policy perspective. I'd like to spend my few minutes telling you about the people behind this application and why I hope that you can have confidence in us. We're a local family business. My dad first started letting accommodation to students in Portsmouth in 1972, and our business, Portsmouth Student Lets, as it is known today, was formally established in 1995. I was born and raised in Portsmouth, and I still live locally in PO4 with my own family, and I'm now in the process of taking over the business from my parents. I hope that one day my children will want to take over the business from me. This city isn't just where I work, it is my home. That's why our reputation matters. Good student housing isn't simply about the number of bedrooms. It's about how those homes are managed and the standards that landlords set. We encourage our tenants to be considerate neighbours because we believe living in shared housing is an important part of becoming independent adults. It's often the first time young people have lived away from home, and with that comes learning how to be part of an established community. We see that as something to be encouraged and support, not something to avoid. After more than 50 years of managing student accommodation, we've learned that the quality of a property depends far more on the people that are living there and the way that it's managed than simply the number on a planning application. That's why we directly employ our own office staff, including a full-time lettings manager who carries out regular inspections and is available to deal with any issues quickly and support our tenants and neighbours. I am personally responsible for the construction and maintenance side of the business, where we directly employ 3 full-time members of staff. One completed his site carpentry apprenticeship with us nearly 5 years ago and is still with us today. Another joined us while studying a multi-trades course at college and has now been with us for more than 4 years. Last year, we took on a property maintenance apprentice from Highbury College. We're proud to be a Portsmouth business providing skilled jobs and training opportunities for local people. 50 Chetwynd Road already benefits from lawful use as a C4 HMO for occupation by up to 6 people, and it already has planning permission for a 5-metre rear extension. Our previous proposal was refused, and that refusal was upheld on appeal. We accepted that decision. The planning inspector identified 2 concerns: the amount of outdoor amenity space and the outlook from the communal living area. So we went back to the drawing board. We reduced the depth of the rear extension by 3 metres, increasing outdoor amenity space, and we relocated the kitchen window to the rear elevation to provide much better outlook. The planning officer has now concluded that those previous concerns have been addressed and that the revised scheme provides suitable living environment for future occupiers. To me, that's exactly how the planning system should work. When concerns are raised, applicants should listen, respond, and improve their proposals. We have done exactly that. This particular property also needs significant investment. It requires extensive refurbishment to bring it up to modern standards, improve its energy efficiency, safety, and provide the quality of accommodation that students should expect today. We're prepared to invest nearly £200,000 to achieve that. For a family business, that's a major commitment, but it's one that we're willing to make because we take a long-term view of our properties. We're not short-term investors. We're improving homes that we expect to own, manage, and maintain for many years to come. Ultimately, this application isn't simply about increasing the number of occupants. It's about investing in an ageing property, improving the quality of accommodation available to Portsmouth students, and continuing a business that has been part of this city for more than 50 years. We've listened to the planning inspector. We've redesigned the proposals to address the concerns that were raised. We're committed to managing this property responsibly, just as we do across the rest of our portfolio. Members, you're not just deciding an application today. You are deciding whether to place your confidence in a local family business that has spent more than 50 years investing in Portsmouth, listening to the planning process, employing local people, training apprentices, improving the built environment, and providing good quality homes for Portsmouth University students. I hope that we've demonstrated that we've earned that confidence, and I respectfully ask you to support the officer's recommendation and approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms Wells?
I think after such an outstanding deputation, there's not much more I can cover. But I wanted to speak to you a little bit about HMO density. The officer brought up HMO density in the area. The neighbour, sorry, I didn't catch your name. Vicky mentioned a bit about the HMO density in the area. What I want to say to you is we are now seeing that in these areas where HMOs are being made larger, we're doing density checks, and we do density checks on a daily basis in the area. And we are seeing like areas where houses that are smaller can't have the loft conversions because they've got smaller roof spaces, smaller gardens, so can't have the extensions. And the smaller C4s, sort of 4 beds, 5 beds, are returning to family homes. So, well, I appreciate members don't particularly like the increase within these HMOs, or super HMOs, as you like to call them. These properties are freeing up properties elsewhere, and there's data out there that now does demonstrate that. As with all the applications I present to you today, this property has been designed to comply with all of the planning, building regulations and the licensing standards. All 8 bedrooms exceed the 10 square metres, and it's fully compliant with PCS 17, PCS 20 and PCS 23, the Portsmouth Plan. I appreciate that you're all aware of this recent appeal. Lawrence has covered most of it. We've redesigned the property. The extension's been made smaller, and we're giving you some given larger outdoor space. But I also wanted to provide some context to the previous application. The applicant was never attempting to worsen living conditions for tenants. The previous design was evolved following feedback from tenants that wanted larger communal areas and didn't particularly use the gardens as much. However, the applicant has taken on board the local authority refusal and the inspectorate refusal, as he's already shared with you today, and we've redesigned that to ensure that the space is given externally. Vicky, sorry, just remember the name again. Vicky mentioned about the outside space still being small. I wanted to stress that yes, it is small, but so are most Portsmouth rear gardens, and you know, there's many applications on this agenda, or on this agenda today and every 3 weeks that is approved with these sorts of size of external space. So I would ask that you keep your decision making consistent, please. That's all really. It's fully compliant with policy, and I trust you go with officer recommendation today. Thank you.
Thank you. I shall now attempt to read Councillor Horton's deputation within 6 minutes. I wish the committee to take into consideration the following points when making their decisions, and ask them to refuse planning permission. 1. to note that officers acknowledge that a 100% increase of occupancy means that planning permission is needed. 2, that the change of use from an already established HMO in actual fact doubles the number of occupants, as the current established use is for 4 individuals. The narrative that it is theoretically increases the use by +2 is not a true reflection of the situation. 3. Outdoor space issues. A previous application for this property, just months ago, was refused on the grounds that the extension left very little outdoor space. Whilst this application has a slightly smaller extension, it remains the case that the doubling of occupants is not proportionate to the loss of outdoor space. The officer's report describes the outdoor area as, quote, albeit still quite small, end of quote. B, added to that, the application details bike storage as well. C, there is a utility cover in the garden that is too close to the extension, and I believe it needs to have 3 meters around it. D, there is a mature tree on the boundary, which does not seem to be accounted for in the outdoor space measurements. E, that's a lot of things in a very small space. Point 4, the emerging local plan, PLP 20, states quite clearly that in areas already in excess of 10% HMOs, that increases in occupancy should only be allowed in exceptional circumstances. This property is situated in an area of 25.35% and is not adding 1 or even 2 rooms, but is attempting to double its size. This is completely contrary to the direction that this council has clearly communicated is best for its residents. As we approach the new local plan being adopted in the current months, it feels appropriate for an ever-increasing weight to be given to this policy. 5. Whilst this meets the space standards, it's another example of, quote, cram them in development, which has now had 3 different applications in for this property. We need to demonstrate the soon-to-be local plan would not support this, and the current use of an HMO is enough. End of deputation. I think I got that within 6 minutes. We now move to members' questions. Well, a question from the chair to start with then. In the remodelling of the property, has there been any change in floor levels, or do these remain as they were originally?
We don't get existing sections, but we do get a proposed section when there is remodelling internally. So I believe you can see from the section, if we see it again, that we've got the scenario we've seen many times before, where the high Victorian or Edwardian ceilings are indeed brought down in it to enable an easier loft conversion stroke extension to the roof, while still complying with the building regulations standards for heights of ceilings. So that's a convoluted answer, but yes, I believe there's an internal change.
Thank you. Councillor Stanton.
With regards to, oh sorry, can we bring that back up? Apologies. It's the same old thing, time and time again. We can see the floor level on drops below the bay window. How would that look from out the front? So will you be able to see that drop down inside the window?
Thank you, Councillor. the section doesn't take us through the actual bay, but I believe the lowered height, according to the section, will be, according to the drawing, will be just about visible through the top of the pane. But I believe it's set back. The agent is nodding. So if we go to the section then, please, David. Thank you. So although it would in theory or in practice be visible, it's set back by that, 50, 60 centimetres. It would be a piece of plaster painted. So, I don't think that's going to cause any adverse effect externally. And then upstairs, it's slightly recessed. You can see there. We've got photos from another scheme on this agenda, and indeed the agents have provided other examples to us where it's done pretty neatly, or very neatly, recessed, and again it'd be like the ground floor, although in theory you could see through the window depending on reflection and so on. It is set back. You really it wouldn't be intrusive or incongruous in the street.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. And another question about. Sorry, I've actually got two more questions, but bedroom number 6. Now, it says the area provided is 11.1 square metres. Can we go back to the cross-section bit again where we can see the slope of the roof in bedroom number 6? So that's that front one there, right? I mean, is the head height in there is not going to be enough. I mean, you'll be able to get through the door. That's quite a slope on that roof in that front bedroom. Is that all in accordance with everything?
It is, Councillor. Thank you. If we go to the floor plan as well then, please. Thank you, David. So you come straight into the room there. The line across, bisecting underneath the roof lights, is the 1.5 metre height.
Right.
We've had those discussions before, haven't we? Although most people couldn't walk quite into 1.5, that is the standard. It is usable for a bed, chest of drawers, that sort of thing. And then they've still got some space beyond that 1.5. That's an imaginary line drawn on here to indicate that point. But you can still see there's some further space in the lowering height where you could have a lower chest of drawers or have a shoe rack or something like that.
Yeah, it's just exactly like Councillor Horton said, though. It's just a cram 'em in there again, isn't it? It's like any spare space is being used. And my final question, apologies, is Councillor Horton raised the fact that there's an amenities drain cover outside and that needs a certain amount of distance around it. Do we know where that is in conjunction to the building and the extension? And also she mentioned a tree. Where is that?
I didn't see a tree from the aerial photograph, but that's not to say it isn't there. I'm just checked with it. There's okay. But if we go back to the site plan, please, David, at the end or the start. Yes, thank you. The applicant has just said there's no tree there, but either way, assuming it's at the end of the garden, which I think was referred to, you could swap the bike store just to minimise that. I mean, and assuming it's not, I've looked at the aerial photographs when I first saw the application, there's no big tree there, at least. So even if there were some small tree, I don't think it would be of any value sufficient to protect it with a protection order. So I think if there were a tree, they'd be entitled to take it down, etc., etc. With respect to any manhole cover, any other utility, I'm sure the applicant would have seen anything on site and will know that the relevant legislation on what space or care may be needed. That would be building regulations for drainage, so it would be outside of planning and they just need to deal with that however they need to.
Are there any other questions? In which case, comments. Councillor Inman.
Thank you, Chair. I was looking at the HMO register last night, and just to put in context what 25% actually sounds like, that is 58 bedrooms spread over just 13 properties in that street. If that's not an over-intensification of the area, I'm not sure what would be. I think adding another 4 bedrooms into that street goes against the emerging plan. we've got 25%, which is well and truly over the 10%. I think we should give this some moderate weight, and therefore I am proposing we refuse this on the grounds of over-intensification and going against the emerging plan.
Councillor Standen.
Yeah, I'll happily second that, because 25% is, I mean, it's taking the mick. It's a lot in a small area. And how many bedrooms was that, Carl? 58 bedrooms in 13 houses. I mean, that is unbelievable. But I do think, because we say that we can't give this too much weight, the emerging local plan at the moment, but we will eventually. This is going to become our Bible, isn't it? So I think we need to give it more weight than just slightly. And Vicky was absolutely right, and she's 100% correct with overdevelopment in the area. But I'd love to know how many rooms are actually vacant in the area, because doubling the size of the property, doubling the size of the rooms in an area where you can bet your bottom dollar there's empty rooms already. So yeah, I will happily second Councillor Inman's proposal to reject it.
Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's worth noting that we're seeing a lot more applications to increase the number of rooms within HMOs, and in fact we've got 3 on the agenda today. This application seeks to increase the number of residents from 4 to 8 in an area where the current concentration of HMOs within the 50-metre radius already exceeds 25%. I think that if we were to approve this, it would contribute further to the overcrowding, and it would disrupt the character of the neighbourhood, which is contrary to the intentions of PLP, or well, PCS 20. So yeah, I'll be back in Councillor Inman's movement.
We have a proposal to refuse on grounds of over-intensification and being contrary to the emerging local plan. Do I have any other proposals? No. Well, let us put that proposal that we refuse on those grounds. Those in favour of refusal,
Chair,
please.
Chair, before we go to the vote, can the planning
yes, if
officers
possible, before we just a couple of things. So if we're going for refusal because there's a material change of use, taking it from a C4 to a sui generis, that brings in the need to mitigate the impacts on recreation and nitrates. So we would need to add in that as a reason for refusal, because that currently that isn't mitigated. So that would need to be a second reason for refusal. I trust that's agreed. And I think for our benefit, we're conscious that we reported an appeal decision previously where we had used the policy, but the inspector didn't support the policy and allowed the appeal. So I think it would help in terms of just understanding that a little bit more about the harm, not just the fact we've got a breach of our emerging policy, what's the harm that flows from that, Chair? Flesh that out, that would be that would help in terms of the reason for refusal.
Councillor Inman.
Yes, Chair. If we can just go back to the diagram of the HMOs, existing HMOs, please. So, as you can see, you've got literally that small concentration, that whole end of that road are HMOs. So, I think it's even tighter than 25, well, it's really tight, and just well and truly overdeveloped. Also, we've got the outside space as well, which we keep referring to, saying it's not big enough. Councillor Horton mentioned that even though it's been reduced, it doesn't go, it's still not reduced enough. Is it worth adding that to the objection as well?
So what the applicant has done in response to the appeal decision is to try and increase that outdoor space by reducing the extension. We've given you a recommendation, we think that's okay, but if you don't feel that that space is acceptable, then we could add that in, that it's still insufficient for the increased number of occupants.
Councillor Perry.
Yeah, just on that, sorry, on that point on its own, I think it feels the right thing to add it into the proposal, because on the grounds that the space has been increased, but it's been increased and the residents have been increased by double. So I think we could counter argue that the space might have been sufficient for the existing residents, but because it's now double residents, is that sort of a legal ground to say why it's not sufficient?
Yeah, nothing further to add. I mean, it's a relevant planning merit issue. It was something that the inspector considered in the recent appeal decision. So, if members' view is reducing, the reduction in space isn't sufficient, bearing in mind the number of increased occupants, that's still a relevant planning consideration in this. Yeah, we can take that forward as a reason.
So, let's get this correct. Sorry, Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Hugh. Yeah, I've got concerns around the community amenity. You know, we're raising this up by 100%. Now, there's going to be an increase in noise. There's going to be a possible increase in antisocial behaviour. We've had evidence of this from the Campbell Properties Appeal Inquiry, which has highlighted that the more residents there are, it can lead to more conflicts, regardless of individual tenants' behaviour.
Okay. Let us put this together as a proposal. It is proposed to refuse this on the grounds of over-intensification, that there remains inadequate outdoor space, that we have the question of nitrates and nitrites. What else do we have? Sorry, yeah, thank you, and the relation to the emerging local plan. Anything else? Councillor Cordy?
There's going to be a 66% rise in waste capacity, going from 480 litres to 720 litres, which poses a potential waste management challenge.
May I suggest we do not put that one in? We leave it with these four. Okay.
Is the proposer happy to add in those extras that, yeah, and the seconder as well? Yeah.
Right. So this has been proposed by Councillor Councillor Inman, seconded by Councillor Standen, that we refuse this on the stated grounds. Those in favour of refusal, please show. So that is 4 in favour and 1 abstention. Planning permission is refused.
Chair, before we move on, could I ask for a 5-minute comfort break, please? Could we have a 5-minute comfort break?
Yes, I think it's a good idea to have a 5-minute comfort break. We will return at 12:15. Okay.
Should we have voted on whether it needed planning permission or not? Is that one of the things that we do, was it?
We should have done, but I was going to let that run through. Okay, are we ready? Oh, yeah. There are 5 of us here. We're quorate. Thank you, members. I hope that you all feel sufficiently refreshed. We now come on to item 8, which is 3 Lawson Road, where I also have a written deputation from Councillor Susie Horton, which I will read at the appropriate time. So, to the officers.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is an application submitted as for change of use from an existing HMO in Class C4 to a 7-person, 7-bedroom HMO in sui generis use. So the site is here, mid-terrace property, no rear access and to the site in this instance. Property here, so no front forecourt either. The property has previously been extended, as you'll see in a bit with the elevations and the plans, with rear loft conversions and extensions. So the property is an existing HMO. It was initially granted, as you see from the report, as far back as 2014 with a flexible C3, C4 use. So that allowed the property to change between dwelling in C3 or a HMO in C4 for a period of up to 10 years. How those consents work is at the point that you reach the 10 years, when the permission expires, whatever use is happening at that point becomes the lawful use of the property from there on in. So it was in use as a HMO at the end of the 10 years, so that fixed the lawful use of the property as a HMO. Just to confirm the point, you'll see from the report, the applicant also submitted a certificate of lawfulness, and then basically all they needed to do in that was just to prove that it was operating as a HMO at the 10 years expiry of the original consent. So we confirmed that point, that the property is lawfully a HMO. So in terms of this planning application before you, it doesn't make any difference to the mixed and balanced communities, where you can see comfortably over the 10% in this particular area, but no change as a result of this scheme. So this is the existing floor plan. Excuse me, the property has been extended and currently has 6 occupiers, so 6 bedrooms you can see here. And in effect, all that is proposed is this existing lounge will become a separate bedroom. So the elevations as is, no physical changes proposed. And then, as you see, as a 7-bed HMO, we would have a bedroom here, which is number 7, shared bathroom on the ground floor, shared bathroom on the first floor, separate WC as well, and then 3 bedrooms in the loft as existing. Again, no changes to the elevations as existing. This just shows the current layout where an extension has been added, room for a cycle store at the back. And just some photos. Property is currently in the process of some renovation. This will be the room at the front, number 7, and you can see the rear yard and the alterations, extensions to the property with the rear dormer shown there. So, Chair, whilst the planning application has been submitted. Our view, as set out in the report, is no planning permission is required for the scheme, simply changing the lounge to be occupied by a further resident. It's not a material change of use. This issue has been rehearsed many times, and through appeal decisions established many times as well. That going from 6 to 7 is not a material change of use, notwithstanding that the applicant has applied for it. So in this instance, this is why we don't believe any form of application was necessary to us, so we recommend an unconditional permission. Thank you.
Right. We've heard the officer's recommendation that this probably doesn't require
Deputations, Chair.
Sorry?
Deputations, Chair.
Representation, that it doesn't require.
You need to hear the deputation first.
Sorry?
You got deputation from the
I am
applicant.
coming to the deputation.
Okay.
Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm just reminding the members of emphasising what you have said, and we will take it from there when we start to deal with these matters. We have 2 deputations. Ms. Wells, please.
Thank you for letting me speak today. As with all the applications I present to you, this property has been carefully designed to comply with the Portsmouth Plan, houses and multiple occupation supplementary planning document, building regs and licensing standards. The proposal seeks permission for a 7-person house in multiple occupation. I just want to confirm the property is currently tenanted for 6, so the increase before you today is 1 person. Some of the bedrooms are below the 10 square metres, which requires a minimum of 34 square metres of communal accommodation, and this proposal meets that with a 35.48 square metre kitchen and dining area. Appropriate bathroom facilities are also provided throughout the property. I also want to assure the members that there's been no change to the external appearance. The property still looks exactly as it would from the front elevations. Secure cycle storage is provided, and the property occupies a sustainable location with excellent access to local services and public transport. There are no highway objections, and in my view the proposal complies with policies PCS 17, PCS 20 and PCS 23 of the Portsmouth Plan, together with the HMO SPD. As a regular attender of this meeting over many years, I can say with confidence, and I walk in the room and see who's in attendance, that what will happen on the day. There are regular members in this room that have never voted yes for a HMO. I feel this is clearly predetermined, and this doesn't happen anywhere else in the UK, and I do attend meetings all over the UK. This isn't planning, this is politics, and I have to raise that because I see it time and time again. Very frustrating when you're dealing with applications, you're making them fully compliant with policy, and decisions are made on a political basis. I also wanted to respond to Councillor Horton's deputation regarding the draft local plan and the emerging policy. There has been a recent appeal, as the officers touched on, at 21 Fraser Road. This was refused on this basis, and the inspector actually placed no weight on the emerging policy and awarded costs against council for the increase in occupancy within a HMO, within an existing HMO. So I just wanted to stress that the last application is open due to costs, and if this one is refused as well, this will be the same. So please ask that you look at the application before you and you actually judge it on planning merits, because that's what we're all here for today. And that's what we try to do at Applecore, is make it fully compliant with all of policy, all of legislation. And as a consultant that comes here regularly, I feel very frustrated by this process. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. The deputation which I have received with regard to 3 Lawson Road from Councillor Horton is as follows. I wish the committee to take into consideration the following points when making their decisions. 1. To agree that planning permission is needed due to the impact on amenity for the occupants and neighbours. 2. The emerging local plan, PLP 20, states quite clearly that in areas already in excess of 10% HMOs, that increases in occupancy should only be allowed in exceptional circumstances. This property is situated in an area of 24.21%, and by adding just 1 room, I believe it will make a material difference in the character of the activities. This is completely contrary to the direction that this council has already communicated is best for its residents. As we approach the new local plan being adopted in the current months, it feels appropriate for an ever-increasing weight to be given to this policy. 3. There needs to be consideration given to the cumulative impact of all HMOs in the area potentially expanding. 4. Whilst this meets the space standards, it's another example of cram them in developer. We need to demonstrate the soon-to-be local plan would not support this, and the current use of an HMO is enough. So, in conclusion, I think that the additional occupant would make a difference in the character and scale of the activities resulting from the proposed use. It is clearly an overdevelopment without regard for future tenants or local residents. I would refuse planning permission, citing the increasing weight given to the emerging local plan PLP 20 and the impact on amenity and nitrates mitigation. That ends the deputations, and we need first of all, I think then, to consider whether we consider this does require consideration by this planning committee. It has been advised by the officers that they don't think it does require, but on the basis of a deputation has been brought before you. What is your, Councillor Cordy?
Yeah, I move that the application does need planning permission. It's moving from a Class C4 small HMO to a sui generis large HMO, and this is a material change of use, in my opinion.
Any other comment? You are proposing, therefore, that we consider this today.
Yeah, this needs planning permission in my.
Is that seconded?
I'll be second.
Seconded, Councillor Inman. Those in favour of considering it today, please indicate. That is carried. We consider this matter today. So, questions for officers. Councillor Inman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think a lot of this now depends upon the weight that we put on the emerging local plan. And could the officers just explain to us what they mean when they say we have to give it moderate weight? Moderate is quite a wide, broad word, and I'm just wondering how much strength do we actually give to emerging plan?
Yes, so thank you, Chair. So the weight that you can give to the plan, we're following the guidance in the National Planning Policy Framework, which indicates that the further that the emerging plan has gone through the process, the more weight you can attach to the policies. You're right, moderate is a bit difficult because that can cover a wide range. The reason why we say in relation to PLP 20 we can only give you moderate, we should only attach moderate weight is because there are unresolved objections to that particular policy. Those aren't, in this case, my understanding, to do with the proposal that we introduce a policy that we refuse the intensification of existing HMOs where the area is already over 10%, but we're more focused on the idea that we should reduce the 10% to a 5% trigger. That's my understanding of what those objections are. But as a procedural point, because there are unresolved objections to that policy, we have to attach it moderate weight. With all these things, you have to balance that against the other issues that apply in this case. So, having concluded, contrary to our advice, that it needs planning permission, you need to consider those issues of our lack of housing land supply. So we have to balance that. We would provide additional accommodation to this, so that has weight in the process as well. And then you need to balance that against any concerns you would have in terms of the intensification of the property. So A moderate weight means that you can apply the policy, but it doesn't have overriding weight in the process. So apologies, there's no kind of grading system for me to tell you that it's 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. It's something that you need to weigh in the balance with all the factors that you have, with the understanding that when you're applying a policy that's been adopted in the existing local plan and our SPD, those have a greater weight in this circumstance. I hope that helps. I appreciate it. It can't be definitive or clinical in that way, Chair.
Councillor Perry.
Can I ask a question about amenities? So I think what you said was that number 7 is the addition, and so the 2 bathrooms and the toilet room, were they already there beforehand?
Yes. Yes, is the short answer. Yeah, so the only difference is the use of that room. So the existing sanitary facilities are as existing, so 2 separate bathrooms, separate WC, and that's still compliant with our guidance in the SPD.
Other questions, members? Right. Members' comments. Councillor Inman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, once again, we've got another over-intensification in the area. Again, looking at the street, I've gone through the HMO register. There's 72 bedrooms over 16 properties. That is an over-intensification of the area. We're at 24%. The local plan makes it very clear, only in exceptional circumstances are we going to allow an increase where it's over 10%. Now, I know that the officer said that there's been an objection, we want to lower it to 5%. That isn't going to affect this when we're at 24% in this particular case. So, therefore, once again, I'm going to say we refuse planning permission on the grounds of over-intensification in the area, and it goes against the emerging local plan.
Would you add to that then the suggestions from Councillor Horton on impact on amenity and nitrates mitigation? Okay. Any other councillor wish to speak on this matter? Councillor Cordy.
Again, it's an area that's highly saturated already. This is an over-intensification. I'd gladly second Councillor Inman's move.
Right, so it's proposed and seconded. Would any other member wish to speak? Councillor Perry.
It's sort of a comment or observation about the risk to us as a council. The previous one we were able to refuse because it doubly increased, whereas this is only increasing by 1. Does that put us at risk? I get the point, it's the principle and it's over increasing, but I also, what's the likelihood of it going on appeal? Because it's an increase of 1. There's no actual change to the building. I know this is a question now rather than a comment, but I'm just trying to make sure that we're within the rules with all of this.
Councillor Cordy.
It may just be an increase of 1, but we're going from a C4, which is classed as a small HMO, to sui generis, which is classed as a large HMO. It's not as if we're going from 5 to 6. We're going from 6 to 7, which changes it into a completely different area.
Thank you, that's really helpful, thank you.
Chair, can I just come in?
Yes.
The Campbell appeal decisions for 3 of the properties said that the addition of 1 person was not a material change of use, so didn't consider that there was an impact.
Yeah, Chair, I think in relation to Councillor Perry's question, I think there is a significant risk, because we significantly overstepped our ability to actually determine the application because it doesn't actually need planning permission. And therefore we're compounding the matter by then attempting to refuse the application. because we're well beyond our remit anyway. So both of those cause me significant concerns. I think also, before we move to a vote, where we were discussing the previous application, we had a planning merit reason put forward in relation to that external space. So I don't have a planning merit. I don't understand what the harm is from one extra person occupying the lounge. Not only because it doesn't need planning permission, that's the first step, but B, what is if there's an extra person? There's no difference to our waste requirements. There's no difference to our parking requirements. There's no material difference in comings and goings, in noise, antisocial behaviour. None of these issues have we ever been supported on at appeal, and we've lost costs on a number of occasions. So I have to give you that warning. The decision to conclude it needs planning permission is flawed.
Thank you for your comments. I'm sure the members will consider them. Councillor Standen.
Just quick, so obviously you said 3 times there that this didn't need planning permission. So why has it come in front of us today?
Chair, it's a good point. I've advised that the applicant shouldn't do this. They should apply for a certificate of lawfulness to establish the point. My understanding is this has become a sort of practice, and it's unique in my professional experience, whereby what the agents preferred to do was to apply for planning permission, in spite of the fact that I didn't think it needed it, on the basis that we would go through this process at the committee would conclude that it needed planning permission, but a feasible number then actually got planning permission as a result, so say 80–90%. And that was actually quicker than going through the process of having a lawful development certificate refused by the committee and then getting a planning permission one on appeal. I can only tell you that I think that's a deeply unsatisfactory process professionally, because in effect what the committee has done is made countless decisions that were wrong from my professional perspective. So I don't think that the agents should do it, but the agents have done it, and because they've submitted the application, we need to consider it.
Okay, thank you for that. And
Chair, can I just come in on the end of that? When the Campbell appeal decisions came in, we did discuss this with Council, whether we should be returning the applications and not determining them, or whether we should determine them. And the advice was that, yes, you need to determine them. So okay. Hopefully that helps you.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I know I'm sorry that we've moved from questions to comments, but it's on relation to what you just said. So with regards to that, obviously, and like Councillor Cordy has said, this is an application to go from a smaller HMO to a sui generis one. So with regards to that, I know at this stage it's only one more person in one more room, but does that give them the option, or does that give them the scope then in future to, because they now have a bigger class, to add in future?
So what you're asking is the very fact that they're changing from a standard HMO to a sui generis,
yes,
give them permission to increase beyond the number which we have at the present
Absolutely,
time?
Because we've seen this before.
Yes, so if you go to the table on page 59, which is the... Oh, no, sorry, no, that's... I'm looking at Chetwynd Road, sorry. Let me go to the right table. So it's the table on... Yeah, page 70,
yep.
Yes, yeah. So... So I don't think any of the above. No. Sorry, reason for checking, Chair, was just to make sure that none of the rooms were of a size that could be double occupancy. But having checked it, none of them are large enough for that standard. They would need to be 11 square metres. So bedroom one in terms of the usable spaces, but below. I mean, the only other comment I would say is you could impose a condition to restrict the occupancy to 7.
Okay, thank you.
Having heard all of the comments which have been made from the chair, I will propose the officer's recommendation on the grounds that precedent shows that a change of one person in a HMO, increasing the number by 1, is not considered in planning law, according to the Planning Inspectorate, to be a material increase, and I think we would lose this on appeal. So I am proposing the officer's recommendation that we should accept the change of use.
I'm happy to second that.
Okay.
But can I just add that can we put in a caveat that 7's the maximum, that they can't increase it from 7? Are we allowed to do that?
I think that they would have to change the building to increase from 7, and therefore it would have to come back for planning permission.
Chair, the only thing is the committee have determined that it needs planning permission. So there's I'm just thinking that Councillor Perry is voting one way and the other at the same time.
I think Councillor Perry has acted, she has questions, but she has acted for whatever reason to second my proposal. But my proposal will be taken after the proposal which has been proposed by Councillor Inman and seconded by Councillor Standen. Councillor Cordy, sorry.
Yes, that's correct.
Right, so we take... Okay.
Yeah, sorry,
Councillor
can
Perry?
I just clarify? So I did agree to planning permission to be considered. So,
Yep.
but I didn't say which way I was going to vote. So am I in conflict then?
No.
No, okay.
No, they're different decisions. So if we just make sure that we take the planning one where we've agreed planning permission is needed first, and then obviously if that fails, we would then go on to the other decision.
So the first proposition before us is to refuse planning permission, giving weight to the emerging local plan PLP 20, the impact on amenity and on nitrates mitigation. Those in favour of that proposal, please show. Those against, please show. The proposal is carried. Planning permission is refused. We now move on to item 9, which is 29 Olcott Road. So, 29 Olcott Road.
Thank you, Chairman. We have an application for the construction of a single-storey rear extension extending 4.3 metres beyond the original rear wall, with a height of 2.5 metres to the eaves and a maximum height of 3.8 metres. So this is what's called a larger home extension, prior approval process. This is some way halfway between permitted development and needing planning permission. I'll take you through the process. The application has come to committee because of the call-in from Councillor Inman. Just to locate you, we're in Copner Ward, so there's Copner Road running north-south on the left-hand side there, and then Olcott Road is along the bottom, and we're in the bottom middle there. You can just about make out the red edge of the application site. So the rear of the property faces north, as you can see by the shadow. So, as I say, and there's a terrace property. So the process, just to make sure members are familiar with that, permitted developments, for example, a 3-metre deep rear extension is permitted. You don't need to apply for planning permission or ask for a lawful development certificate. Some people do, but that's up to you. Between 3 and 6 metres on a terraced house, rear extension from the original is doesn't need planning permission, but there's a prior approval process. It's halfway between, if you like, permitted development and a full planning application. So the process is the application is made to the local planning authority as to whether or not prior approval is required. The neighbours, the adjoining neighbours, are written to, and they have 21 days within which to object should they wish. If they don't object in that period, then no prior approval is required, i.e. the applicant can build as they wish, irrespective of the local planning authority's view on the quality or the impact, I should say, of the proposal. Should one of the adjoining neighbours, not someone down the street, but one of the adjoining neighbours, object on amenity grounds within the 21-day period, then the local planning authority does have to determine the application, and it will make its own decision on that. Some are approved, some are refused. And this one has a valid objection from one of the neighbours in the required timescale, so that's why it is for decision, and Councillor Inman has called it in to the committee. One of the reasons Councillor Inman called it in was of the lack of details. The government requires only limited details. So you saw in the development description there the description of the dimensions of the proposal. That is all that is required, and a plan like this. However, to assist everyone, the applicant did oblige and has provided fuller plans so that we can assess it even further. Okay, thank you, David. So the conservatory on the left-hand side is already demolished, but that's what was there before. So proposed on the right-hand side is its replacement. So that's the 4.3 metres deep beyond the original rear wall, and it is 1.3 metres deeper than permitted development. You might just see on the left-hand side, you've got the blue wall, or the wall coloured in blue, and there's a slight gap between the boundary line. That is what's called the party wall, which is an external wall, really, but you'll see that, and that is for retention. That was one of the things we were keen to clarify with the applicant, and they have obliged. Thank you, David. So we'll have a photograph in a minute, but top right is the existing elevation that shows the side. The extension is the thing just above the party wall there. And then below is the slightly larger, slightly taller, and slightly longer, slightly deeper extension proposed. And then if we go to the next slide. So this is from the objecting neighbour in their garden. So next door to the right, you can see where the conservatory was. It's been taken down and is awaiting this decision. And you see the tall party wall, brick wall painted cream or white that will be proposed for retention. The next photograph shows it even more clearly, and so you can see the proposal top right and see how that would fit in. So it would be taller than that tall party wall and would extend beyond it nearly to the end of the white wall, just to the right of the composting bin there, I think. So you can see the area on the plan that would be particularly visible to the neighbour should they come out of their conservatory and look left to that. This garden is north facing. We felt, although clearly it would be visible to the neighbour, it is to the side and it is filling in that gap between the large party wall and the tall fence, and it would be set behind that party wall just by several inches, puts it off beyond the boundary. So although clearly perceptible, we didn't feel it exerted such an influence as to warrant refusal of the application. The neighbour doesn't agree and has their concerns, which is fine, but the officer's recommendation is that it is acceptable and therefore prior approval should be required and granted. We did have public speaking down from the applicant, but I don't think... oh, I do apologise, you're there. Thank you.
Mary Jane Stairs, the floor is yours for 6 minutes.
Thank you. I won't need 6 minutes, but good afternoon now. My name is Mary Jane Stairs, and I'm here to talk on behalf of myself and my husband, who are the current owners of 29 Alcott Road. I understand that the personal circumstances are not for planning considerations, but I wanted to briefly explain why why this house means so much to us, and why we are committed to restoring and improving the house for the future. So last year I inherited the house from my grandfather. He bought that house from his grandparents, and he lived in there for around 60 years. It's been part of my house, part of our family for generations. I grew up there, taking part in street parties, using the facilities from the local businesses, and even went to school at the formerly known as Lyndhurst Junior School. Although we could have perhaps sold the property and just moved on somewhere else, we want to, stay there and restore it, but make it our forever home, make it so that it's suitable and enjoyable for us. From the beginning, we've wanted to ensure that everything was done the correct way. We hired a chartered architectural practice to design the extensions, prepare the drawings, manage the applications on our behalf, so that the proposal would meet all the relevant planning requirements. Just to reiterate some of the thoughts on the report, we understand and we respect the a neighbour's opinions and thoughts. One of the main concerns was the natural light. It's north facing, and the sun doesn't reach that part of the garden very much because of the way that it's north facing. So it will have a slight increase in overshadowing because of the shared boundary, but didn't feel significantly harmful to justify the refusal of the plans. The other concern was around the scale of the extension. Whilst it is larger than standard and compared to next door, but there is a vast majority of single-storey rear extensions of different varied lengths within the area. I would just also like to clarify again one of the points that was raised, and that was about the one of the objections was around the flashings being attached to the conservatory wall that was there. We have no plans to demolish that wall. It is to build within it, so to cause less disruption and to any party wall agreements and things like that. We appreciate the neighbours are entitled to raise their concerns, and we respect them, and we do respect their rights to do that. Equally, we have tried throughout the whole process to approach our renovations responsibly, professionally, and in accordance with the proper planning procedures. My husband and I are both local people with businesses based in Portsmouth. Richard manages a local facilities company, and I manage a local early years nursery. Throughout this renovation, we've chosen to support local tradesmen, including ground workers, electricians and plasterers, with actually in the Copner area. This proposal has never been about increasing value or, maximising the full potential of space. It's about simply having a larger home for us to stay there, for our forever home. We don't think we're asking for anything extraordinary. We're simply asking for the opportunity to adapt this much-loved family home and continue to live and care for it like it has done for the previous years. So I respectfully ask for the committee to support the planning officer's recommendation and grant the approval, please.
All right, thank you. Members, questions? Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering, have the officers visited the site to judge the impacts on light loss and privacy?
Yes, Councillor. The photos you've seen were taken by the officers, so yes, precisely from the neighbours, yes.
Councillor Perry.
Can you show the picture again from the garden I've got a question about one of the walls that you can see in the picture. Yeah, so the brown brick wall, is that going to, so that's, I presume that's the neighbour's wall. Is that a wall or a conservatory, or what is that?
I think that, yeah, thank you, David.
Yeah, as you can see, it's a conservatory. So would the new build be in line with what the neighbour that side has got?
No, it projects beyond as well. It's quite similar on both sides. So it would project beyond by 1.7 metres.
So slightly longer, but height-wise, it would be in line with the neighbour's height?
Yes, because that neighbour, yeah, the plans show it just fractionally above, because that party wall, the brown one, is taller than the first one we've looked at.
So I suppose my comment or my point there is it's in keeping with the neighbour the other side.
Well, yes. I mean, as per the applicant, although it's deeper than either neighbour, that's not uncommon in the area. And in this instance, the officers feel it's not an undue effect, and so is acceptable.
Councillor Renman.
Thank you, Chair. I called this in mainly just because A, lack of information on the original application, and B, I just wanted to check with light loss onto the conservatory, because it's going to go up quite a height and come out quite a bit. So where we've got the conservatory there, I'm just wondering, is there going to be a substantial loss of light into that conservatory?
Thank you. We've talked about sunlight, as the neighbour mentioned that. If we go back to the photograph, I'll deal with both sunlight and daylight, slightly different things. Thank you. So it is north-facing. I assume, if you look in the bottom right, it says 9:06 a.m. And of course we're in high summer, so the sun was just getting around from the east, shining across the back of the property. 20, 30 minutes, an hour later, it will be dipping behind the house. So imagine that extension built there. That would throw a bit of shadow across, in that case, in the morning, to the neighbours beyond the brown wall, and in the evening, as the sun comes all the way around the house, at the end of the day, just for that short period, there'll be a bit of shadow thrown over the objector's garden here, but only in the height of summer, only at the start and the end of the day. Come spring, autumn, and certainly winter, the sun won't get anywhere near that. So sunlight, limited effect at this time of year. Daylight comes from above, the extension's to the side, so I don't think it would make any material effect at daylight.
Right. If there are no other questions, comments? Councillor Renman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm quite happy about the loss of light. That was my main concern. That's why I called it in. The officers have confirmed that there won't be any loss of light to my neighbour. So if I'm happy to propose that we go ahead and allow the planning permission.
Right, you propose. I'm happy to second that. Are there any other proposals, comments? Nope. No more comments. Okay, we'll put it to you. We have a proposal to accept the officer's recommendation. Those in favour, please show. Those against, please show. That is carried 4-1, so you have your planning permission. Thank you. We now move on to item 10, which is 38 Margate Road, which again is one of those areas where there's a very high concentration of HMOs. So it is a change of use from house in multiple occupation class C4 to an 8-person's 8-bedroom house in multiple occupation sui generis. Officers?
Thank you, Chairman. That is indeed the application. It's come to the committee because of the blanket call-in from Councillor Vernon Jackson, and it's had 6 objections, although not from local residents. Excuse me. So correct, as Councillor Mason has just helpfully outlined, this is another increase in occupancy, in this case of 2 persons, from 6 to 8. So based on Campbell decisions, etc., officers do not believe it requires planning permission, but as per the previous discussion, the applicant has chosen to apply for planning permission, and so in the normal manner we would ask you to first decide whether or not it needs planning permission. If you feel it does, to then go on to assess the application. Margate Road, so we are just in St Thomas Ward. Cottage Grove is just one to the south, and then next to the south is Elm Grove. So that's the broad area we're in, not far from the city centre and very close to the Elm Grove local centre. Terraced house with a quite a generous back alleyway there, I think gives access to the existing rear outbuilding. Property is already in use as an HMO. It has a lawful development certificate from a couple of years ago. So moving on, there we are, mid-terrace property. Thank you. So with respect to mixed and balanced communities, indeed, they're 25%, 25.7. Currently, that would not change. Rather, there will be an increase of 2 persons if this is granted planning consent. So that's back to the same matter of the weight you wish to afford to the emerging local plan policy PLP 20.2 against the housing land supply exceptional circumstance that officers are putting to you, which in officers' opinion balances in favour of granting planning permission. With respect to the floor plans, the property has already been extended under permitted development with the roof extension. Yes, and so it's now a repurposing of rooms only. So at the moment, you've got 6 bedrooms on the upper floors, and the 2 front rooms on the ground floor are labelled as study and lounge, I think. Those 2 would be not repurposed, would simply be used as 2 bedrooms. That's where the extra 2 occupiers would be housed. So on to the proposed. Thank you, David. So there's the extensions. Proposals, there we are. So bedrooms 1 and 2 are currently not bedrooms or not occupied as bedrooms. They would be under this application. So in this case, we've got shared shower, toilet, WC, and basin, sorry, on the ground floor. And then the shared communal space at 22.93, just above the 22.5 required. And then we have a shared toilet next to bedroom 5, a shared shower and toilet between bedrooms 3 and 4, and then another shared toilet and hand basin on the top floor. So all of the rooms are in accordance with your standards, and officers are happy with the configuration of the rooms and the lights and outlook. I think that's all to say. I don't think I've missed anything, have I? No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So as the officer said, this proposal seeks permission for an 8-bedroomed house in multiple occupation. You can see from the photos that it's empty at the moment, but it is actually tenanted. The 6 people have already started moving in. So the increase that you're considering today is the 2 people. All 8 bedrooms exceed 10 square metres, and the proposal provides 22.82 square metres of communal kitchen and dining, so it meets the requirement. Appropriate bathroom facilities have been provided, and the secure cycle storage and good quality accommodation for future occupiers. The external alterations have all been carried out, like you can see, and there is no changes to external elevations. With this proposal, I know members are used to seeing all ensuite accommodation, but this property still meets all of the policy requirements and will be offered at a lower price point, which will provide a good standard of accommodation for those individuals who either need or prefer a lower cost of living option. I note there's been 6 objections on this, and I just again want to reiterate the officers mentioned they're not even from local residents. So that's clear to me that this HMO has no impact on the neighbouring properties. If it had have been, there would have been some local objections, as you would have seen and we see on other properties. My colleague has spent a few hours this week searching plan applications over the UK and appeals for 1 and 2 people increase, not being a material change. And we now have 31 decisions all over the UK which now support this stance, which is quite a strong stance to have. I wanted to sort of explain why that we applied for planning permission. David touched on it briefly. So we applied for the planning permission not because of any bad practice or any sort of calculated way of doing things. We do it purely because this committee do not believe that 1 or 2 people increase is a material change. So we've tried this previously. We've done a certificate of lawful development for the 1 or 2 people increase. It comes to this committee. The committee refuses it. We then go to appeal, which takes about 7 or 8 months historically, although we are seeing appeals moving faster now. So we purely do this through general because it is a quicker way of doing it. It has serious financial implications for the applicant when they have to wait 7 or 8 months, which is why we're here asking for a sui generis application. I also wanted to note that Councillor Horton has made objections to 2 of the applications today, both in her ward, and I can't help but wonder how her vote would go today if if she was in attendance. As this meeting is recorded, I would also like it noted that due to the lack of members in the room who actually vote on planning policy and not with politics, it's clear that all these applications, I can see, will be refused today. This is now going to cost the council thousands of pounds of taxpayer money, but not just that, it costs the applicant, it's going to cost them thousands of pounds in bridging finances, property sitting empty, costs that they can't make up over the next 7 or 8 months once they appeal. And these are people who spend hundreds of thousands of pounds contributing to the local economy, which I think is something that really should be given a consideration when determining these applications. This is a well-designed proposal and it provides good quality accommodation while making efficient use of an existing residential property in a sustainable urban location, which is what the National Planning Policy Framework is supportive of. I therefore respectfully ask that you agree with the officer recommendation for approval today. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Gillian. Members' questions? Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. Do we need to see if this needs planning permission first, Chair?
Well, let us do it first then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I propose that the application does need planning permission as it's a change of class from a C4, a small HMO, to a sui generis, large HMO, which constitutes a material change of use.
Is that seconded? Is Councillor Standen? Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to that? Councillor.
Can I ask a question? So is that correct, what we're saying? It is a change?
No.
Not according to officer's professional opinion and KC or Queen's Counsel advice we had at the time, or barrister advice. No. Each and every application on its own merits, but I've yet to see one for an increase of 1 or 2 persons where officers have concluded it would need planning permission. But that is why we've understood why the applications are made, and committee has to decide whether or not it accepts the officer's recommendation that planning permission isn't required, but it's been applied for, and so here's a permission, unconditional, or whether if it feels planning permission is required, to then consider the merits.
Can I just also add that something that changes from a C4 to a sui generis HMO, that doesn't mean that it needs planning permission. That's just wrong.
Yeah, that was my second question. Can we use that?
Nonetheless, it is in the hands of the committee to decide whether they wish to consider this or not. The committee is paramount. We have a proposal which has been seconded. Those in favour of that proposal that we consider this planning application, please indicate. That is carried. We consider it. Questions to officers?
Sorry, can we do the for and against? We've done for, can we do against and abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you. Against, thank you.
So 3 in favour, 1 abstention, 1 against. Questions to officers? Councillor Standen.
With regards to the layout of the property, there's 3 bedrooms on the top floor with no shower facilities on the top floor. which means there could effectively be 6 people using the shower on the first floor. What are our sort of parameters of how many people to one bathroom?
For 6 to 10 persons, the parameters are 2 separate bathrooms, which you have, and 2 separate WCs. One of the WCs can be in a bathroom. Here we've got, indeed, 2 separate WCs, and both of them are entirely separate. So it's above the minimum standard.
I just fear for the people that live there. It's just doesn't seem right to me. That many people in one bathroom. I mean, I know people can go downstairs, but just want to get that across, really.
The point which is being made, however, is that as it stands at the moment, you would have people on the first and second floor using those bathrooms. Yeah? Okay. A question which is not strictly a planning question, the officers. You mentioned in your presentation that you had received a number of objections. How many of those objections came from the P05 zone?
I'd have to check, Councillor, but we have objectors who object almost as a matter of course to planning applications for HMOs that don't live anywhere near them. So we think that's fair to report that because they're not local at all. They'll have their own reasons for objecting and so on, and they're reported. But it's just to make the point that they're not local objections.
Okay, so you've mentioned they were not local. Would you please be more specific as to what local means?
We don't have a definition. We wouldn't want to get into. We wouldn't want to say if you live more than 400 metres or 8, we wouldn't define you one way or the other. But I'd have to check quickly the addresses. But from my experience, there are different people who live up in parts of Hillsea, North End type area. So not local, a mile or 2 away from this application.
Chair, if it helps, yes, the objections that we've received have all got PO2 postcodes. I mean, the purpose for just acknowledging that is where the objections are referring to impacts on things like sewage capacity, parking, noise and disturbance. Members should be aware of whether those comments come from people with a direct experience, considering it's already a HMO within the immediately surrounding area. We do still consult people directly by letter. So those letters go out to the adjoining properties, so anyone with a common boundary or directly opposite. So it's to help members in their decision making that where you've been petitioned in the objections on issues like as I've just described, which may have a local impact, the degree of local knowledge that comes from those objections. Hope that helps.
Yes, I thought, given that it was mentioned in the officer's presentation, it was important to make that clear. Other questions on this?
Yes, Chair. Just going back to what was said earlier on, that the house currently has tenants in there. It's not on the 38 Margate Road, isn't on the HMO register?
Okay, I didn't know that. Again, don't worry about that. In that they're applying for...
I refuse that because we're actually being asked to make a decision based on the density. And if the HMO register isn't up to date and is inaccurate, how can we make that decision?
I can't account for whether or not licensing should or shouldn't have included it on their register. But as I said before, we don't just rely on the register because it won't necessarily tally in with planning. They have their own reasons for putting applications on, sites on. For example, granting planning permission doesn't necessarily mean a property will become an HMO, and I think until and unless it does, they don't put it on the register, which would explain why number 246 Havant Road, for example, although it has planning permission, it's not on the register because it was a recent planning permission and they haven't yet carried it out and applied for a licence and implemented it. So that's why we need to look at more than one source. So that's why we always check the planning history. As in this instance, I'm not entirely sure. I've got a lawful development certificate a year and a half ago, nearly 2 years ago. Whether or not it's on the register, there's a planning application in front of you. They have a lawful development certificate as an HMO from a planning perspective, so you can rely upon that. That is the planning position, irrespective of any licence, and they're applying to intensify the occupation by a further 2 people.
Chair, can I just add that those two, so the licensing regime is a separate regime from the planning regime.
I understand that, but what I'm worried about is we're being told about the HMO register. I asked specifically last week at one of the meetings if the HMO register was accurate and up to date, and I was assured by the Chief Planning Officer it was. So if we're saying it's is that a licensing register? Do we have a HMO register?
It's a licensing HMO register, not a planning HMO register. The planning officers check the planning side of things, which are relevant to your decision today.
So do we have a planning HMO register?
You've got a what's called a planning register, which is in effect the history of all planning applications, and so we search that when we're investigating all of these applications to establish what the planning history is of both the site and any sites within the 50 metre radius. Just to confirm, we have been provided with evidence that the property has a licence granted in 24 for 5 years, and that would reflect its lawful status as an existing HMO. So it is licensed, even if it's not appearing on the register.
Councillor Stoughton.
Okay. That's great that there's evidence that it is licensed. That's brilliant. However, I cannot get round the fact that clearly Portsmouth's HMO register, whether it's a planning matter, whether it's a licensing matter, I think a lot people need to get in a room and get their heads together and get this squared away, because we're getting, you put a table up of how many HMOs are in an area, every single HMO application. But how can we guarantee that that's correct? How do we know that every time we're making a decision, because twice today we've made a decision on whether there is overcrowding in an area. We don't know whether there's even more in an area every time we look at one of these tables to show us how many HMOs are in an area. We're making decisions on inaccurate information, and that we can't do that. Something's got to happen for us to be able to know that all the information we're going off of is 100% correct every single time.
Yes, I mean, understand the concerns expressed, Chair. As I say, we do reassure members that in relation to exploring all available information that we have, licensing, planning records, council tax as well, when we're looking at these matters. So we do caveat that sometimes HMOs do, in our reports, they do go back into CC residential use, and they don't have to advise us when they do that. They can just lawfully change back. We do emphasise, we do look at all available resources so we can be confident we're giving you the most accurate picture. In relation to this, it's not the determining factor because we're dealing with an existing HMO and we're not breaching, not looking at an issue whether we're breaching the 10%.
Thank you.
Okay. So effectively, we don't know then, do we? We don't have accurate information. And I know that our members of Parliament have brought this up before as well. Is there any way, as a planning committee, we can make a decision, or would this have to be a full council? This is probably a question for yourself, whether it's a full council decision about, until our HMO register is up to date and we know it's accurate, everything with HMO stops.
Councillor Standen, the planning officers are professional officers who interrogate all the evidence they can possibly do before they come to planning committee. I don't think I've got anything further to add.
And I appreciate that, and the officers are fantastic, but if the officers can't get the accurate information, I'm not saying that that's their fault. I'm saying it's somewhere along the line something has fallen down, and
Chair, I
we
think
don't
we need to
understand.
move on with the actual application rather than discussing whether information is correct or incorrect. The officers have interrogated all the sources that they possibly can for this planning application. You've been advised that a licence was granted 5 years ago, for 5 years, and was granted in 2024. That information has come before you in this committee. Can we please move on and decide the application?
I think, Councillor Standen, that we're in a position where we are required to make decisions because planning applications have been made, and we make them on the basis of the best information which is available to us. We realise that in many areas, I think, information may well be out of date, in some cases may be faulty, but we have to make a decision. We cannot put off making a decision. We have to make a decision on the best information which we have available. I think it is now a point at which we need to move on. Are there other questions to officers? If not, can we have, do I have any comments from members or proposals? In which case, since this is a house which is already, we know, in multiple occupation, and it is an increase in only one person.
Two, Chairman.
Sorry?
2 people.
2 persons. I will propose the officer's recommendation. I do not think that there is any way that this will make the area of Margate Road significantly more problematic than it is at the moment. I also think that there is no way that on appeal to the Planning Inspectorate we would win this. So I propose the officer's recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Perry.
I'll second.
Are there other proposals? In which case, I put the officer's recommendation for the change of use for a house in multiple occupation, Class C4, to an 8-person bedroomed house in multiple occupation, sui generis. Those in favour, please indicate.
Chair, sorry. On that, we need some conditions. Shall I just run through briefly the conditions we'd have?
Yep.
Thank
okay.
you.
So the officer's recommendation and the conditions.
Yes, we only have 3 at the end of the report. Time, year, plans, and...
I think he's. I think the chair has moved unconditional permission. Is that correct?
It's already been a move that it requires planning permission that's been carried, Juliet.
Sorry?
Yes, but they haven't done the second part for that one. They've said that it needs planning permission. Hugh is now putting forward a proposal that it doesn't need planning permission, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah, because it reads
Sorry, I just wanted to check.
Permission,
You said you...
conditions none. Page 57, sorry, page 87.
Apologies, I misunderstood, Chairman. Sorry.
Am I right or...
Yes, we don't need any conditions, I think. You've moved the officer's recommendation, which is unconditional permission. Yeah, so there's no... yeah.
Right. Okay, we'll come back to it. I have proposed the officer's recommendation for unconditional permission. Can I see those in favour? Those against? Those abstaining? In which case, 38 Margate Road has planning permission for change of use. We now move on to the last item on the agenda, which you will find as item 6, which you will find, I'll get there eventually, item 6, which you'll find on page 45.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll keep this brief. I presume everyone knows where the site of this application is, as it's directly outside the window, and suitably enough, as it's nudging 30 degrees, we're thinking about ice rinks and Christmas. This is to renew the temporary planning permission for the seasonal location of the ice rink in Guildhall Square, just outside. This will be intended to run from November to early January each year for a period up to 2033-34, so for the next 8 years. So site you're all going to know and be very familiar with, just there, just adjacent to where we're currently sat. I presume most members are familiar with the structure that is erected each winter, and the proposal is that it remains as is. In terms of that on the site, it fills the levelled area between the steps to the Civic and the steps into here. As you'll see from the report, there was the planning permission originally was granted back in about 2017. That permission's now expired, and I understand that it was a larger scheme before and included a bar or something in this area here, but that's no longer part of the proposals, and since I've been working at Portsmouth, I don't believe that has been part of the scheme that's built each year. That shows how it's laid out. That's how it looks in 2D plan form, which doesn't tell you a lot. The principal issue we just wanted to make sure is considered and addressed is that there are a lot of heritage assets within the area. It's all a conservation area. You've got a series of listed properties for 2 and 2-star with the War Memorial, and also locally listed. Both pubs on here opposite are locally listed. So there's an impact to the setting of these heritage assets whilst the ice rinks in situ. It's a fairly utilitarian structure, but nonetheless it's a temporary effect and is all fully removed each year. And so with the obviously economic and social benefits that the scheme brings during the winter celebrations, we're very happy to recommend approval, and subject to the temporary and seasonal conditions shown in your report.
Thank you. Members, questions? Members, observations? Councillor Redmond.
My only concern is the 8-year period and tying it in for 8 years. I think this is the longest it's ever been granted, is that correct?
Yes, so I think it was 6 years before. I think there wasn't actually a planning permission for last year because I think the permission had expired and I can't find a temporary consent. So we'll gloss over our breach of planning control. But yes, I mean, it doesn't mean that it happens every year, it just allows that 8-year period for the permission to run.
I'm all in favour of ice skating. I love ice skating, and I think it makes a fantastic scene out in the Guildhall and actually improves the scenery out there. So therefore, I'm more than happy to propose that we move with the officer's recommendations.
Councillor Perry?
I'm happy to second that.
Members, those in favour, please indicate. For once, we are unanimous.
Thank you for stepping in, Hugh.
Well done, Hugh. Thank you very much.